If a man came into your life, wouldn't you want to compromise? Stupid. In Hollywood, where dreams are sold and careers are made, a disturbing truth has been buried so deep that most people never get to hear it. Countless gifted black actresses have been broken, discarded, and destroyed at the hands of white men in power. They walked through those doors carrying dreams of stardom, only to have it all ripped away by white men, changing their lives forever. Here are the 15 stories of black actresses whose dreams were extinguished by the very men who promised to make them stars. Watch this until the very end, because once you hear what was done to these women, the glamorous world you thought you knew will never look the same again. Billie Holiday. By the time Billie Holiday married Jimmy Monroe in 1941, her voice had already altered the course of American music. She did not imitate suffering. She bled it into every lyric. She carried it onto every stage. Audiences did not clap right away because what she delivered was too raw, too human, too honest to interrupt. She was not simply a singer with talent. She was a woman turning her wounds into sound, and Monroe understood exactly what that power was worth. He entered her life as a protector, a manager, a steady presence. But once the doors closed, he became something else entirely. He beat her. He degraded her. And then he did something even more insidious. He deliberately introduced her to heroin, knowing addiction would bind her to him more tightly than love ever could. Control was his goal. Dependence was his weapon. Billie relied on him for bookings and access to venues. He positioned himself as the gatekeeper to her career. Leaving him did not feel like an option because he had made sure her survival required him. As her fame expanded, his insecurity rotted into cruelty. He isolated her from musicians who offered support. He whispered constantly that without him, she would lose everything. His violence escalated until in 1947, he beat her so brutally she was hospitalized. And while she was still bruised and recovering, Monroe reported her drug use to the police. The same man who handed her heroin handed her over to authorities. She was arrested in Philadelphia before her body had even healed. That arrest shattered her life overnight. New York clubs revoked her cabaret card, legally banning her from performing in the very venues she had once ruled. The industry that profited from her pain discarded her without hesitation. Monroe faced no consequences. He moved on, continued working untouched. Billie tried to rebuild through new recordings and overseas tours, but her body was deteriorating. The addiction Monroe seeded and sustained, layered with years of abuse, relentless stress, and untreated health issues, had ravaged her liver. As she weakened, federal authorities surveilled and harassed her, treating her as a target instead of a patient. By the late 1950s, she was physically shattered, emotionally drained, and nearly alone. On July 17, 1959, Billie Holiday died in a hospital bed at 44. Heart failure from advanced liver disease. Even in her final hours, there was humiliation. Police guarded her hospital room as she lay dying, limiting visitors, watching her as if she were a suspect instead of a woman taking her last breaths. She had 70 cents to her name. The man who destroyed her never answered for it. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge rose to the top after Carmen Jones in 1954. She stood there as the most celebrated black actress in Hollywood, nominated for an Academy Award, radiant, unstoppable. Then Otto Preminger decided she belonged to him. He did not just direct her on screen. He controlled her life off it. He pursued her romantically until she gave in, then used that closeness as a leash. He told her he believed in her future, that he had created it, and without him, she was nothing. When she tried to pull back, when she wanted space to make her own decisions, his warmth disappeared instantly. "You are nothing without me," he shouted at her during one argument, his face inches from hers. "I built you. I can destroy you." He did both. He decided which scripts she could read. He told her which men she could speak to. He showed up at meetings uninvited and humiliated her in front of producers. When she tried to pull away, he did not scream. He went cold. He picked up the phone. Suddenly, directors stopped calling. Producers who had once praised her now whispered that she was unstable, difficult, and too emotional. Lies spread like fire. She could feel it happening and could not stop it. Her career did not collapse loudly. It was strangled. She finally escaped him, but the damage was already done. Then came Jack Dennison. She married him in 1959 because she was tired of fighting alone. She wanted safety. She wanted peace. Instead, she walked into another nightmare. He managed her finances and kept her completely in the dark. He poured her money into businesses that failed. He hid the debts until they became impossible to hide. The first time Dorothy understood the full truth was when debt collectors showed up at her door, demanding payment she had no idea she owed. She opened her bank statement and stared at the numbers. It was almost nothing. She had worked her entire life for that money. It was gone. She was left humiliated, betrayed, exposed. The press mocked her. They called her reckless. They sneered at her relationships. They blamed her for trusting the wrong man. Studios turned their backs. The phone stopped ringing completely. She sold her jewelry. She sold her clothes. She moved from place to place, tried to hold herself together while her health cracked under the pressure. Depression crushed her. Debt swallowed her. On September 8, 1965, Dorothy Dandridge was found dead from a prescription drug overdose. She was 42 years old. The man who shattered her walked away untouched. Eartha Kitt, the Catwoman, queen fell by presidential power. By the time Eartha Kitt walked into the White House in higher life, she had been born into poverty, endured abuse as a child, survived rejection, and carved her own path on stages that were never designed for women like her. She forced Hollywood to acknowledge her brilliance when it would have preferred she disappear. Her portrayal of Catwoman had made her unforgettable. She was a trained vocalist, a disciplined dancer, and a woman who spoke directly without apology. That evening, she was invited as an entertainer, but she entered as a citizen who would not silence herself to protect comfort. The dinner at the White House was meant to be elegant and controlled, filled with polite laughter and careful admiration for President Lyndon B. Johnson. When the discussion turned to the Vietnam War, Eartha Kitt listened as powerful men defended policies that were sending young Americans home in coffins. She spoke with clarity and emotion about grieving mothers, poor communities absorbing the cost of war, and children returning broken or not returning at all. She spoke about bloodshed. The room froze. The silence that followed was not thoughtful. It was furious. The retaliation was swift. Within weeks, Eartha Kitt was portrayed as unstable and unpatriotic. The CIA opened a file on her, documenting her movements and labeling her a potential threat. She was no longer treated as an artist. She was treated as a problem. Headlines questioned her loyalty. Hollywood protected itself with speed and obedience. Studios chose political safety over fairness. Doors closed quietly but completely. Television roles evaporated. Theater offers vanished. Film opportunities disappeared. Income stopped. Eartha Kitt found herself explaining to her young daughter why feeding suddenly became difficult. With no viable future in the United States, she left for Paris. She lived modestly, performed where she could, and rebuilt piece by piece in foreign languages and unfamiliar rooms. The exile carried humiliation and isolation. Rumors followed her across continents, branding her volatile and ungrateful. Years later, when she returned home, the industry still kept its distance. Eartha eventually resurfaced in the 1980s and 90s, touring internationally and voicing Yzma in Disney's The Emperor's New Groove. The applause returned, but the lost years never did. The CIA file compiled on her grew to more than 270 pages. One honest statement in a room of power had rewritten her entire life. Lena Horne. In 1947, Lena Horne opened letters that told her she should be killed for marrying a white man. She had secretly married Lenny Hayden, a white MGM music director in Paris, because interracial marriage was illegal in many American states. When a marriage became public, the backlash was immediate. Hate mail flooded in. Some letters used racial slurs. Some threatened violence. Studio executives called her into meetings and warned her that she had damaged her career. MGM did not cancel her contract. They did something colder. They stopped building films around her. They refused to cast her in serious dramatic roles opposite white male leads. She was placed in musical numbers that could be removed without affecting the plot. Southern theaters regularly cut her performances out of films to comply with segregation laws. The studio allowed it. Entire audiences watched movies where Lena Horne simply disappeared mid-story because projectionists had sliced her scenes from the reels. Black audiences criticized her for marrying outside her race. Josephine Baker, a legend defamed by a white journalist. Josephine Baker was not just a performer. Think about what this woman actually did. Born in St. Louis, she left America after facing racism and humiliation that would have broken most people. And she rebuilt herself into a superstar in France during the 1920s. Not a local act, not a supporting role. She headlined major theaters in Paris, starred in films, and earned more money than most American performers ever dreamed of. Then World War II arrived, and instead of sitting it out safely, she went further. She worked for the French resistance, carrying secret messages hidden in sheet music, smuggling information across borders, and using her celebrity to pull intelligence from powerful officials who never suspected a thing. France later awarded her military honors for risking her life. In 1951, she returned to America carrying that history and the courage to speak. When a New York nightclub refused to serve her because she was black, she did not stay quiet. She called it out publicly, loudly. That was enough to make Walter Winchell furious. Winchell was not just a columnist. He was feared. One sentence from him could end a career, and he aimed straight at her throat. He called her ungrateful. He sneered that she was trouble. Then he labeled her a communist sympathizer. In that era, during the Red Scare, that accusation meant you were being branded as someone who supported or secretly worked with the Soviet Union, America's enemy. People lost jobs, were blacklisted, and were treated as traitors over that word alone. He pulled the trigger in print. The FBI opened a file on her. Venues canceled her. Contracts vanished overnight. Her assets were seized. Winchell kept his column. She kept her scars. Josephine fled back to France with her finances destroyed and her American career completely erased. She raised 12 adopted children in a country that was not her home, performing wherever she could, rebuilding slowly and painfully. She died on April 12, 1975, never having reclaimed what Winchell took from her in a matter of weeks. Della Reese. The fortune stolen in broad daylight. By the early 1970s, Della Reese had already done what many said was impossible. She had crossed from gospel into pop, landed her own television show, and built a career that stretched from nightclubs to network screens. Her voice filled rooms. Her name sold tickets. She had earned her success dollar by dollar. Then the theft began. Della later revealed that her white financial managers, men she trusted to protect her earnings, quietly drained her accounts. They handled contracts, controlled paperwork, and reassured her that everything was stable. She was working constantly, touring, recording, appearing on television. The money should have been multiplying. Instead, it was disappearing. She only discovered the truth when creditors began calling. Millions were gone. Taxes had not been paid. Investments she had been told were secure did not exist. Properties were mismanaged. Her signature had been placed on documents she never properly reviewed. The people she trusted had treated her career like an open vault. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Della Reese was forced to file for bankruptcy. A woman who had headlined shows across the country was now fighting to keep basic stability. The humiliation was public. Headlines focused on her financial collapse, not the men who orchestrated it. Della Reese did not lose her fortune because she was reckless. She lost it because powerful men decided her trust was expendable. And rebuilding what was stolen took years of grinding work long after the applause had faded. Bea Richards, civil rights warrior crushed by the FBI. Bea Richards did not step into Hollywood chasing fame alone. She arrived carrying conviction, belief, and a deep anger toward injustice that had shaped her entire life. When she appeared in Take a Giant Step in 1959, audiences saw a woman of intelligence and strength whose presence felt grounded and real. Behind the scenes, Bea was already known as someone who spoke openly about racism, wrote plays attacking inequality, and refused to soften her views to make white audiences comfortable. Years before her film success, Bea had already been marked. Her plays addressed racism directly and named it as violence rather than misunderstanding. She attended political meetings, supported civil rights organizations, and believed deeply that black artists had a responsibility to confront injustice instead of hiding from it. That visibility drew the attention of J. Edgar Hoover, a man who saw outspoken black women as threats to national order. Hoover did not need proof to act. Suspicion was enough. The FBI began tracking Bea quietly. Her name appeared in files filled with assumptions and lies. She was accused of communist ties without evidence, a label that functioned as a death sentence in the entertainment industry. Hoover used his influence to poison her reputation before she even knew what was happening. In 1953, a producer who had promised Bia a lead role received a letter from the FBI warning that she was politically dangerous. The role disappeared overnight without explanation. That moment shattered her future. After that, the silence became constant. Film offers vanished. Directors stopped returning calls. Bia watched her momentum die slowly and painfully, knowing exactly why, but powerless to stop it. Hollywood did not defend her talent because fear was stronger than fairness. With no income from acting, Bia took whatever work she could find. She worked menial jobs that drained her physically and emotionally while caring for her aging mother. Depression followed closely behind. She questioned herself constantly, wondering whether speaking up had been a mistake, even as she knew silence would have destroyed her in a different way. When Guess Who's Coming to Dinner appeared in 1967, her small role felt less like redemption and more like a reminder of everything she had lost. It did not reopen doors. It did not restore trust. The blacklist had done its work too well. Bia lived the rest of her life carrying the weight of professional erasure, knowing she had been punished not for wrongdoing, but for refusing to accept racism quietly. Fredi Washington, destroyed for loyalty to black identity. Fredi Washington entered Hollywood at a time when appearance determined destiny. With her light skin and striking features, studio executives saw an opportunity to reshape her identity for profit. Her performance and imitation of life made her famous, but it also placed her directly in the crosshairs of an industry obsessed with control. Louis B. Mayer saw Fredi not as a woman, but as a product that could be altered. Mayer offered her a path to stardom built on denial. He wanted her to pass as white, to erase her black identity publicly and privately in exchange for leading roles. Fredi understood exactly what he was asking, and she refused without hesitation. She would not abandon her heritage, her family, or herself for access and money. That decision sealed her fate. Mayer responded with quiet cruelty. Fredi was stripped of opportunities, pushed into minor roles, and labeled arrogant and ungrateful. Rumors spread quickly, and directors were warned not to work with her. By 1937, her contract was gone, and her presence in Hollywood was unwelcome. With no work available, Fredi left Los Angeles and returned to Harlem. She performed in small theaters for little pay and took jobs unrelated to acting to survive. The fame that once surrounded her vanished, replaced by financial strain and constant disappointment. Fredi watched others advance by accepting roles that reinforced stereotypes, while she remained punished for dignity. Hazel Scott, the piano genius crushed by the FBI chief. Hazel Scott was a prodigy before she was even old enough to vote. As a child, she sat at the piano and played with control that stunned adults. By the mid-1940s, she was blending classical music with jazz in a way that felt bold and precise. Audiences filled theaters to hear her. Hollywood signed her because she brought money and attention, but they welcomed her talent, not her opinions. Hazel saw that clearly, and she refused to pretend otherwise. She spoke openly about segregation. She turned down shows that required her to perform for divided audiences. She refused to walk on stage if black and white patrons were separated. She demanded equal treatment in contracts, in dressing rooms, and in pay. She insisted that when she appeared in films like Rhapsody in Blue, she would be shown with dignity, not as a stereotype. That confidence disturbed powerful people. They were comfortable with gifted performers. They were not comfortable with gifted performers who would not stay silent. By 1950, the government had decided Hazel Scott needed to be controlled. J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI accused her of communist ties without real evidence. Suspicion was enough. Fear was enough. Her name was dragged into investigations. She was called before congressional committees and forced to defend her loyalty on national record. She had to stand in front of lawmakers and prove she loved a country that still denied her equal rights. The damage was swift. The Hazel Scott Show, one of the first television programs hosted by a black woman, was canceled without explanation. Bookings vanished. Contracts disappeared. She had to eventually sell her home in New York to pay bills. Friends pulled away. Professional allies avoided her calls. No one wanted to be associated with someone marked by the FBI. The pressure broke her down. Public attacks, lost income, and isolation wore her down day by day. By 1952, the strain pushed her into deep depression. Her health collapsed. She was hospitalized. Later, when she tried to return, the industry treated her like she no longer mattered. She still played with the same brilliance. The skill had not faded, but the support had. Hazel Scott did not fail. She was pushed out. She paid the price for refusing to accept unfair treatment, and for speaking when powerful men wanted silence. Nina Mae McKinney, the cinematic legend cast aside by an MGM mogul's ambition. When Nina Mae McKinney stepped onto the set of Hallelujah in 1929, she knew she was talented, trained, and capable of far more than background roles. But she did not yet understand how fragile success was for a black woman in Hollywood. The film was a massive achievement, and audiences responded strongly to her performance. For a brief moment, Nina Mae believed her future would be shaped by merit rather than permission. That belief did not survive long. MGM mogul Louis B. Mayer watched her rise carefully, not with pride, but with calculation. He believed black performers existed only within strict boundaries that preserved white comfort and control. Nina Mae was expected to be grateful, quiet, and obedient. Instead, she asked for better roles. She questioned why her characters were limited to maids and dancers when she had already proven her range. Those questions alone made her dangerous. Mayer responded with authority. He dismissed her concerns and warned her that pushing further would cost her everything. But Nina Mae did not back down. She continued to ask for work that reflected her intelligence and skill. That resistance sealed her fate. In 1931, Mayer terminated her 5-year contract. He then issued clear instructions to MGM directors that Nina Mae was not to be hired again under any circumstances. The damage was immediate and devastating. Rumors spread, quickly labeling her as difficult and arrogant. Casting agents stopped calling. Nina Mae found herself isolated in an industry that had praised her only months earlier. With no work available in the United States, she made the painful decision to leave the country. Europe became a place of survival rather than opportunity. In European clubs, she performed night after night for unstable pay. The work kept her alive, but did not restore dignity. She watched white performers receive opportunities denied to her while she lived in temporary rooms and carried her costumes from city to city. By 1935, exhaustion and financial strain forced Nina Mae to return to the United States. She hoped time had softened Hollywood's memory. Instead, she found an industry that pretended she had never existed. No studio would hire her. No director returned her calls. Nina Mae took part-time jobs, including bartending, simply to survive. Nina Mae lived the rest of her life knowing that her downfall was the result of one powerful man deciding she had gone too far by wanting more. Ruby Dee, civil rights torch extinguished by a vicious plot. Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis were not just married, they were partners in every sense. They acted together, protested together, spoke publicly for civil rights, and believed their work could push America to face its own racism. Ruby was already a respected stage and screen actress. She had starred in films like The Jackie Robinson Story and was building steady momentum in Hollywood. Then J. Parnell Thomas stepped in. Thomas was a powerful congressman from New Jersey and the chairman of the House Un-American Activities Committee. That committee was created to investigate suspected communist influence in the United States during the early Cold War. In 1950, Ruby was accused of communist sympathies without a single piece of evidence. The blacklist followed immediately. Film contracts vanished. Broadway doors closed. The role she had secured was threatened. The message was blunt. Speak about racial injustice, and we will destroy your career. They left Hollywood for a small apartment in Harlem. Ruby took waitressing shifts. Ossie accepted whatever work he could find. Two gifted performers were scraping by, while Thomas continued his political career untouched. Abby Lincoln. Abby Lincoln entered the entertainment world with fire already burning inside her. She was a singer whose voice carried honesty and urgency, and an actress whose presence demanded attention. From the beginning, she spoke openly about racism, injustice, and the violence inflicted on black communities. That refusal to remain silent made her both powerful and vulnerable. Her acting career gained momentum in the 1950s. Films like The Girl Can't Help It brought her recognition and visibility. At the same time, her activism grew stronger alongside her husband, Max Roach. Abby attended protests, spoke publicly about civil rights, and challenged white institutions that expected compliance. Hollywood watched closely and waited for her to step out of line. That moment came when she was considered for the role of Maria in West Side Story. The opportunity could have changed her career permanently. Behind closed doors, she was told her activism made people uncomfortable. She was encouraged to soften her voice, reduce her public presence, and distance herself from political causes. Abby refused. She would not trade silence for success. Director Robert Wise responded with calculated cruelty. Abby was removed from consideration for the role without transparency. Soon after, stories began circulating that she was unstable, aggressive, and impossible to manage. Those narratives spread quickly through casting offices and studios. Offers disappeared. Meetings were canceled. Abby felt doors closing one by one. The financial impact followed quickly. Acting work dried up almost entirely. Abby relied on sporadic jazz performances to survive, though those opportunities paid far less than film work. By 1964, the pressure had become unbearable. She sold her home in Chicago and moved into a small apartment in Los Angeles. The downgrade was not just financial, but emotional. She had been pushed out of a career she had earned. Abby continued to create music because it was the only space that allowed her honesty. Even there, support was limited. The industry had decided she was a problem rather than a talent. Theresa Harris. The cinematic flame snuffed out by Hollywood's racist curse. Theresa Harris entered Hollywood with elegance, confidence, and the belief that talent should determine opportunity. When audiences saw her in Babyface in 1933, they responded instantly to her charm and intelligence. Theresa believed she had earned a right to grow. After success on screen, she requested a chance to play a romantic lead. It was not a demand rooted in arrogance, but a logical step in a career that was already thriving. That request exposed the cruelty beneath Hollywood's surface. Daryl F. Zanuck of 20th Century Fox rejected her outright and made it clear that no amount of talent could overcome his belief that white audiences would never accept a black woman in such a role. Theresa refused to apologize for her ambition. She did not beg. She did not retreat. That resistance triggered retaliation. Zanuck pushed her into nameless supporting roles that erased her presence. She was cast as maids, singers, and figures meant to exist quietly behind white leads. At the same time, rumors began circulating that she was difficult and ungrateful. Those lies traveled fast and shut down potential support from other studios. Work slowed until it nearly stopped. Financial pressure mounted. Theresa took sewing jobs to survive. Her health quickly declined under constant stress. Hypertension followed years of poverty and isolation. The industry that once praised her beauty and talent offered no assistance. Theresa lived the rest of her life, carrying the knowledge that her downfall was engineered by racism and power. Pam Grier. By the early 1970s, Pam Grier was not just another actress. She was a force. Films like Coffee and Foxy Brown made her the face of a new kind of heroine. She carried guns. She carried entire box offices. Audiences lined up to see her because she was powerful, fearless, and unapologetic. But off-screen, powerful white men wanted something very different from her. Pam has spoken openly about the pressure. Producers invited her to private meetings that had nothing to do with scripts. Studio executives made it clear that bigger budgets and stronger roles came with expectations. She refused to trade her body for contracts. She refused to play that game. After she said no, the offers slowed. Major projects she was attached to suddenly shifted. Her name quietly disappeared from casting lists. No public scandal. No headline attack. Just silence. The kind that kills careers. Then there was Freddie Fields, a powerful white producer who entered her life, promising stability and protection. He became emotionally controlling and professionally dominant. He monitored her decisions. He interfered in negotiations. When their relationship collapsed, so did much of her industry backing. Doors that had once opened easily began closing. When blaxploitation films declined in the late 1970s, studios did not help her transition. They moved on to safer, less outspoken faces. Pam was left fighting for roles in an industry she had once dominated. She was not pushed out because she lacked talent. She was sidelined because she would not submit her body. These women did not fail. They were failed by men who controlled every room they walked into, by a system that took their talent, profited from it, and then punished them for wanting more. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to click on one of the cards on the screen to watch another video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.